Big time fight coming up this weekend in our co-main event for Flyweight Gold. This division's back. Flyweight never die. We have Deus De La Guerra, Deiveson Figueiredo taking on the assassin baby Brandon Moreno. And Matt, we might have caught some fans off guard when we went on the What Happens Here podcast with our big time guy,
Marcus Deegan.
And Matt from Marcus A shouts. Great guy, and it was so much fun to go over there. But I think we scared a lot of people, and not we. I think you scared a lot of people by the question that you asked Brandon Moreno.
I have another question that has nothing to do with fighting. It's just because I need to know for my own sake. How long does it take to build a piñata from scratch, start to finish?
How dare you? You need to talk with my parents. I was very bad making piñatas. Bad, you know. All my family are very good, you know. It's a family company, you know. But yeah, I was very bad. Normally, for example, my brother usually take, my 10 minutes, 20 minutes to make one. But for me, it was like
quick.
fucking 30 minutes and build something. That's why I'm fighting right now.
But straight up, Matt, I mean, really appreciate Marcus having us on, and Matt, Ultimate Food Champion over there on Instagram. But it was a lot of fun. Who would have thought, like, how crazy is it? From 2018 to starting Fight Night Picks, we're talking right into a computer with a podcast. And now we're talking to Brandon Moreno, a guy that had just come off a crazy fight, a huge Lego fan, a former piñata maker, unsuccessfully. But Brandon Moreno is one of the most interesting cases in UFC history because he had so much success, then lost a fight, and it was like, see you later. And then he comes back in off a win and lights the division on fire. It's insane.
He was one of those unfortunate casualties from, I don't know what we're going to call that time period in the flyweight division, like the great cutting. Whatever you guys want, whatever term you guys want to make up for it, go for it. But Brandon Moreno was unfortunately just one of those guys. Oh, you lost? Well, you're on your way out. Now, luckily, the UFC figured it out and they kept the division. DJ left, Cejudo. Everyone knows the story. But it's kind of crazy to see just how far the flyweight division has come since Brandon Moreno's first run in the division and from his time on The Ultimate Fighter. Because you have to remember, this is the guy who fought in the same season of The Ultimate Fighter as Tim Elliott. When Tim Elliott fought Demetrius Johnson, like that was years and years ago. But Brandon Moreno, I would say, has probably been the most successful fighter from that season, even though he only fought once and lost on the season against Alejandro Pantoja. So the fact that Moreno has been able to improve so much throughout his career is really impressive. The thing, though, that I do worry in this fight is that Brandon Moreno, I thought he would have success by switching it up in their first fight. I thought the ways Moreno would have success was not only by his volume, but his ability to shoot the takedown, and his ability to scramble, his ability to just make Figueiredo work. We saw that, and Figueiredo still didn't get tired in that fight. That was the one thing about that first fight that I don't think people remember. Like, the one thing that I held on to hope for Brandon Moreno to win that fight was, okay, if he can not get finished until like the second round, maybe he can win round 3, 4, and 5. The issue was, though, he might have even done better as the fight gone on, but Figueiredo wasn't exhausted by the end of the fight. Like, Figueiredo still was throwing output in that 4th and 5th round, and he still had a lot of pop on his shots near the end of that fight.
And if you do look at it, and I'm not a big countdown guy, but I did watch the countdown for this week, and it was interesting because both of these guys had fought relatively at the same time. I mean, you had Moreno, who beat Brandon Royval. Obviously unfortunate the injury, and you wish nothing but the best for Royval, who, from all accounts, is getting back to octagon ready. And Figueiredo had just successfully defended his belt against Team Oyama's Alex Perez in impressive fashion. So they said, no, we're keeping this guy in the States. It was like a big play, but we're keeping Deiveson Figueiredo. He can't go to Brazil. He's got to stay here. And for Moreno, a guy that trains at a Tijuana, but had talked about buying a house in Vegas. He was sticking around in Vegas. His manager's Jason House. And ultimately, his coach, his manager, everybody kind of figured, if we can withstand just a first-round storm, we should be able to win. And that wasn't really the case.
It was a lot more complicated than that. And Brandon Moreno did have success in that first fight. And it was only a draw, though, because Figueiredo lost a point. Like, that's the thing people have to remember. Figueiredo won the fight 3 rounds to 2.
Now, it was weird because there was 1 nut shot, and then there was 2 nut shot, and 2 nut shot, like, you could probably hear it down the block. Like, it was bad, and I know Figueiredo said that Moreno milked it, and if you're Moreno and you get kicked in the nuts or the cup, A, it's going to hurt, but B, you might milk it if it's a title fight, and I don't hold that against him.
He also got hit in the nuts by one of the hardest punchers pound for pound in the UFC. What is there to discuss right now? What are we talking about? Deiveson Figueiredo kicked Brandon Moreno in between the legs. You've felt that pain before, and you've never been hit by someone who hits as hard as Deiveson Figueiredo. I'm sorry, but whatever you just said for the last 30 seconds, disregard. Brandon Moreno got hit in the nuts, and I'm sure it hurt him really bad.
And Matt's a idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about. In this case, it's the fact that if you watch any of the promos, they're selling the fact that the nut shot made a big difference. Now, it did in terms of, hey, we lost a point. And for Deiveson Figueiredo, that was huge. That was the difference between winning and drawing in the fight, not necessarily losing. So we come into the second fight where Figueiredo, and we talked about it beforehand, where Deiveson Figueiredo's not just invested in himself, but the people around him. And I know that if you watch any of the pre-fight tape, you see old Priscilla Cachoeira, old zombie girl, who's on a win streak, by the way, at 125 pounds. Not just a win streak, a 2-fight finish streak. And for Deiveson Figueiredo, investing in the people, investing in the camp. We've seen this out of a lot of big fighters. GSP was a huge proponent of that when he was at TriStar, but not just TriStar, moving around, training with some of the best in the world. If it was Freddie Roach or John Danaher or whoever it was, we've seen another fighter do this recently, and it has paid off in spades in Charles Oliveira. And it's not just a Brazilian connection, but you saw it with the pre-fight for him against Michael Chandler. I've invested in the people. I've invested in myself. Both of those guys ultimately incredibly successful with not just title bids, but then we're going from title bid to now booking fights where we're looking to defend against top quality opponents. Figueiredo, I would say, defended against Moreno, even though it's just a draw, so he gets to hold on. And I don't know what Deiveson Figueiredo is going to do in this division, because he's 33. Is it going to be a Woodley situation, because he had a draw early on against Wonderboy, then he was able to win some more, and then, you know how the story goes. Figueiredo's only loss is to a guy that's not in the UFC anymore that was really good for a long time in GCA Formiga. Brandon Moreno, absolute heater since he's been back with UFC. A draw against Askar Askarov, you be the judge, it's tricky. And the draw against Figueiredo. But when it comes down to this fight, do you see it playing out any differently than the first fight?
I do think this fight will be fight of the night. Like, I really do. I don't think you can put these two guys together and it be a boring fight. Like, Francis and Derek Lewis, they said that, but you knew there was always, like, a little smidge that, okay, these guys both power punchers, maybe they're hesitant. These guys are going to deliver. At the end of the day, I've got to pick Deiveson Figueiredo, though. I just like what I saw from him in the first fight, and if he did avoid that nut shot, we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion right now about the immediate rematch. I love watching Brandon Moreno fight. One of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, pound for pound wise. I just don't think his entertainment value is going to be enough to get him over the hump and turn him into a championship fighter. I think Brandon Moreno is going to be in the top 5 for a very long time. He's going to be around the UFC having entertaining fights for a long time. I just don't think he's got the style to beat Deiveson.
I mean, Matt, big Brandon Moreno fan. That's going to kill you a little bit. That's a big tough one. But for Figueiredo, open to -275 favorite. He's a -240 right now. For Moreno, open to +2. 05, he's a +192 right now over on Topology. 1,099 total votes, 77% Figueiredo, 50% by decision, 34% by knockout. For the 23% that I'm Moreno, 59% by decision. I know they talk about it again in that same countdown that I referenced earlier. Moreno saying, hey, I ate his best shots. I might not get finished. And that's true. But we did learn that Figueiredo is not just a 1-round, 2-round, 2.5-round type of guy. He has that staying power late. Now, did Moreno have opportunities round 4, round 5? He did. But again, Figueiredo wasn't washed. He wasn't tired. Over the hill, if you will. So yeah, I gotta go with the Brazilian. I gotta go with the Ant still in this fight. But I absolutely love it. It's a great one.
Fred Van Vliet says bet on yourself a lot. And that's what Deiveson Figueiredo did with his camp and with all of his new resources. Like, that's my favorite thing about Figueiredo. He was already a great fighter who then went on to get better. Like, you don't see that often. You see fighters get to a certain level, then they kind of plateau. Think of Luke Rockhold, for instance. Like, Luke Rockhold got to a UFC title shot and was Strikeforce middleweight champ by throwing a really good check right hook, left straight, some kicks, and being good at jiu-jitsu. Now, yes, that's quite a few things, but he was very basic, and he was able to go really far with that. But you saw that at a certain point, he was just kind of complacent with his, I don't know if it was training, you be the judge of it, but he never really progressed after a certain point. Deiveson Figueiredo, I still think is getting better, even though he has become champ, and I really couldn't say enough good things about him because of that.
Just as long as nobody's moving around in the gym with Brendan Schaub's podcast partner, he should be good.
And the last thing I will say is, only because Figueiredo fight, the weight cut always does concern me about Figueiredo. It's not that I'm going to switch my pick or anything, but by the time question mark kicks does roll around, I might have a different opinion on this fight.
So Matt, both of us going with Deiveson Figueiredo, but like you said, make sure you check out question mark kicks. It's 2 hours before the prelims. The thumbnail and everything goes up the day before or the day of, because it's always tricky. You never know if you lose fights. They change the start time for those prelims. Make sure you check out the rest of our content coming out this week, because listen, I don't have $1,500, but I had about 90. So I did get a blaster box, the UFC Panini Prism cards. Make sure you check out some of that special content that we have coming out later on in the week. We got a big main event. You're not going to want to miss that. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.